The Feed.
Exclusive deal between Libsyn's AdvertiseCast and the newsworthy pros and cons on shipping a microphone to your guests. How Twitter can become the world's #1 podcast platform. Sharing YouTube stats for The Feed. Comments on AI from Spotify. Automatic silencing from Auphonic. The best microphone for wireless buds per The Verge. And as always, stats, geographic, and user agent. Hello. I am Elsie Escobar, Director of Community and Content for Libsyn. And this is episode 230 of The Feed, the official Libsyn podcast, the podcast that takes it beyond how to podcast into keeping you podcasting, with podcasting tips and information for the everyday podcaster and taking you inside Libsyn. If you would like to get featured on the show, send in your 30-second promo. This is your little reminder. Please, please, please send in your 30-second promo for your show or for your episode. How do you do it? You attach it to an email and send it to thefeed@libsyn.com. If you don't have a promo, but you want your voice on the show, you want to share a little bit about who you are, or at least let our community know who you are, ask us a question or add to the conversation that you hear on an episode. Send us voice feedback. You can call us at 412-573-1934, or you can use SpeakPipe. And you can head over to speakpipe.com/thefeed, or as always, simply attach it to an email and send us the voice feedback to thefeed@libsyn.com. I'll be keeping an eye out on our email, and then I'll send you all the information that you need to know. If you have a promo that you've sent in, it is first come, first serve. So the sooner you get your info to me, the sooner I'll get you in the queue. And now on to our main conversation with Rob Walsh. This is the VP of Podcaster Relations at Libsyn, as well as my co-host, right after the first promo of the episode. And this is from Video Fuzzy.
Hi, I'm Terry J. Ahman, host of Video Fuzzy, my blog and affiliated podcast for media, commentary, and nostalgia. In episode 87, titled Mozzie, the Treasure, the pilot episode of USA Network's White Collar turned up in my collection. It was a sign I should road trip, visit my friend Kirk Nybakken in Minot, and relive the awesomeness of eating train pizza and ripping on this ridiculous show. It can't be this easy to get in and out of a Super Max prison.
It's the TJ Maxx prison.
Check out episode 87 of Video Fuzzy wherever your podcasts.
Hello, Rob.
Good generic time of the day, Elsie.
Happy day for recording. And it's getting warm now. It's getting warm. There are sunshine outside. Had to turn the air conditioner on a little bit last night so we can cool the house down and we wouldn't sweat through the night. So that's new.
We are getting warmth here as well. Although I had to hide in my studio yesterday for a good part of the day because the neighbors, they were doing some jackhammering to a driveway, and it was right outside, and I was like,
ooh,
driving me nuts. So I moved into the studio where I couldn't hear any of it. So I was like, yes.
Oh my goodness. But we are starting off today with a little bit of news of something that we're sponsoring, huh?
Right. We're sponsoring, I guess it would be a webinar or event, how to make a breakout hit podcast, which is May 16th, 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern time. So the day this episode releases. So we're putting this at the beginning of the episode. So you have a chance to pause. This is put on by the podcastfellows.org, which is part of Stony Brook University. Hi, Tony. If you are hearing this on the 16th, you might have time to catch this. Link in the show notes. You can pause now and check it out and then come back. We won't be offended, but we wanted to put this up front to give you that option and opportunity.
I love it. Now, by the way, for those of you who are listening in a podcast app that supports chapter marks, this would also be a really wonderful opportunity for you to click through, because I'm going to see if I'm going to add the URL to the ID3 tags with an embedded link, and you're welcome to do that. And of course, there's always a link in the show notes. So if you want to just click through to the show notes, the link is going to be right there and you can just tap straight through. 2 different ways that you can sign up if that's what you want.
You can always find our show notes at thefeed.libsyn.com.
/site.
podcast.com/site. And this is episode 243.
Perfect. All right. And we also have a little bit of an announcement from Libsyn around a new advertise cast something. Libsyn announced an exclusive advertising deal between Libsyn's AdvertiseCast, the industry's premier podcast advertising marketplace that connects advertisers with podcasters, and The Newsworthy, a daily news podcast that offers a fast, fair, and fun look at the top stories, hosted by award-winning journalist Erica Mandy. The Newsworthy, a longtime Libsyn and AdvertiseCast user, will leverage AdvertiseCast's full-service advertising platform, including its automatic ad solution, to augment their host-read program with programmatic ad revenue. From Trevor Smithlin, head of publisher relations at Libsyn's AdvertiseCast and chief innovation officer at Libsyn, quote, "Our renewed partnership creates a clear opportunity for brands and advertisers to align with the Newsworthy's fast, fair, and fun take on the day's top stories and reach a growing set of engaged listeners seeking trustworthy news sources." And from Erica Mandy, creator, producer, and host, The Newsworthy, quote, "With Libsyn as our long-standing hosting partner and AdvertiseCast as our valued advertising platform, I've been able to grow The Newsworthy into a sustainable business and provide credible value to our news-loving listeners on a daily basis," unquote.
Congrats, Erica, and we are very excited to continue working with you. So great news there.
Yay! All right. I can't wait to see you again, Erica. I'm probably going to see you over at Podcast Movement. So it's going to be super fun. And kind of sticking to a little bit more of the Libsyn stuff before we get into podcasting at large, there is a small UI change on Libsyn 5. This is about setting up your show. Just in terms of visual, what next, right? You need to just click the little cogwheel icon in the top of your Libsyn account to display the settings page. That's it. The little cogwheel is where all of the settings are going to be. And that's where you can go ahead and click podcast, and the podcast settings form opens up.
Right. So it was the word settings. Now it's the icon for the gear icon, the cog icon in the upper right. So that's the change, because we always want to make sure there's little changes coming all the time.
Yeah. And also it just gives it a little bit more space for all kinds of really fun stuff that might be coming forward. So there you go.
Like for those that are on the auto ads program, we added money. There's now a money word up there. Yeah. So if you're in our auto ads program, which you can find out about by going to libsyn.com/auto ads, you get reporting on how your auto ads sales went by the little thing that says money, the little word up there. I don't know, you have to say a little word, but the word money. So there.
The word money.
Word. Money.
It's a big
There's
word.
a whole song
Everybody
by Pink Floyd
likes
about it.
Oh my God. All right. And then we have an article that you put in here from Inside Radio.
Yeah. According to Standard Media Index, SMI, so I don't have to say that over and over and over, $2 billion of national ad dollars was spent on digital audio during Q1 of 2023, more than the $1.8 billion for broadcast radio. So beat out broadcast radio. Per what is included in digital audio, that would be webcasts of radio stations, streaming music services, and podcasts. Quote, SMI's numbers are based on national advertising buys with data it captures from actual agencies invoicing data from all the major holding companies and most major independents, representing about 95% of the national brand ad spend, unquote. So it's not a small data set. This is a huge data set. Per podcasting ad spend, it grew 43.7% year over year for Q1. Pre-recorded, i.e. programmatic spending, that would be libsyn.com/auto ads. You didn't remember that URL. Spending there is up 46.9% year over year. Host-read ad spend was up 30.7% year over year. And money spent on branded content or sponsorships was up 51.4% in Q1 year over year. Again, those are all Q1 year over year increases. They did say for now, podcasting only gets about 26% of the national brand's digital audio ad spend. SMI did think that percentage would go up in the future. From SMI, quote, podcasts are very connected to the user in the audience because it's geared to a specific topic or conversation. What appeals to advertisers is being able to demographically target their advertising message to content. I want to correct that. Should have been psychographically target. But anyway, I go on. So I think naturally, because of that, you are going to have that ability to see a larger share of spending go towards that, unquote. I know a professor at the University of Kansas that would be very upset when you use demographic when you meant psychographic.
Mm-hmm. Is that right?
Yes, she had Carrie had it and had that was her pet peeve. Speaking of advertising, today when we record Thursday the 10th, the IAB upfronts are going on. If anything interesting comes out of that, we'll go over it on episode 243.
Sweet.
Right.
I am waiting for all the information that's going to be coming out through that. All right. We have our very first question, and this question is actually from our friend Mignon, the grammar girl herself. She had a question that she posted on LinkedIn, and I told her that we would answer this question. Okay. So this is what she said. Do you happen to have advice already posted somewhere about the pros and cons and maybe how-tos of sending guests a microphone?
All right. So I'm going to say how to do it. No, I'm going to talk pros and cons after. But how you can do it, if you want to get the microphone back, then you really want to figure out the shipping from their location back to you. You can do that when you go to ship it. You can say, hey, what would the reverse shipping be from that location? And can I prepay to get a label and put that in there in the box? So that's one thing you can do and should do if you want to get the microphone back. Per the mic to ship out, again, I go back to our standard long-time recommendation, the Samsung Q2U mic, because it is both XLR and USB, and it gets good sound and doesn't have the hand noise, and it comes with a tripod and everything else. You can get those little kits for $65 typically on Amazon. If you do not care about getting it back, well, one, must be nice, but two, then just buy it and have it shipped directly to the guest, and at least if you use Amazon Prime, you save on shipping costs. So, you have to look at what the cost is for shipping it back to wherever you're shipping it from and the shipping to, and see if it's worth getting it back. But it usually is worth getting it back, so I would go with the label. Now, the pros and the cons. The pro is you're getting them a mic that's much better than their laptop mic, and we will talk about later, better than earbuds. So you're controlling some part of the quality of your show by giving them that mic. So that's the key pro. Con, obviously, is the price and the time. And, you have to get the mic to them. And who knows if you have that time always. You have to schedule out. So there's time issues, there's price issues, and then there's training issues, right? If they've not used the mic, getting the mic, telling them how to use the mic, making sure it plugs in, it works, and that they actually, and I've heard of this one, someone's sending somebody a mic, they plugged it in, and it still pulled off their laptop mic because they didn't check the right box. So they went through all the effort of sending the mic out only to find out at the end that they had the wrong mic. So I would highly recommend you have them tap or rub on the head of the mic. As horrible as in NSFW that sounds, you can at least hear if that rubbing is coming through and they have the mic actually attached. So if you're going through the problem of sending a mic, make sure they actually selected the right mic and you're not hearing them from their laptop.
Yep. So to sum it up here, time, price, training. And part of what we mention here is, first of all, there are, I'm sure, even beyond the USPS or maybe even UPS or any of the other ones already have ways in which you can work by sending things out, because this has been happening with Apple and things like that for a long time when you have to send stuff back. One key thing, if I were to advise you being able to send something like this, is to really start to think about if you've ever sent anything back to Apple, they do such a wonderful way of not only showing you step by step what you need to do in terms of reference, as in like a handout inside of the box. Do this, do this, do this to send it back, exactly what you need and exactly how you need to pre-package it to send it back. So there is that aspect of it, which is really, really helpful, that diagram, right? To be able to teach somebody to do that. And to add to that equation too, having a little bit of a diagram as to what you need to do and what ports to stick the stuff into would also be super helpful for whoever is getting it, because I'm assuming this is probably going to be one of the first times that if you're sending a mic to somebody, it's going to be one of the very first times that they are doing something like this. So they're going to really need to know how to stick the microphone into the computer type of a thing, and including a couple of things that Rob just mentioned again, setting the settings, right? The audio settings inside of the device for both Mac and PC. So those are some things to do that. So the initial time is going to be invested in trying to figure out what that protocol is, not only to send the box, get the training in there, as we mentioned before, so that you can get that stuff sent back to you. That's probably going to be the best bet. And absolutely, the Samsung Q2U is the best choice for that. Now, one thing that I would add to the mix is for you to be very thoughtful about why you're sending this microphone, because the pros and cons are going to change depending on the guest, is my opinion in the matter. If it's going to be somebody that is going to, it's going to be one of those really high traffic episodes, if you will, or if it's a little bit more high profile guest, this would be a really wonderful way for you to obviously set to up the audio quality, especially with repurposing and things like that. If you're going to be doing that kind of a thing, then yes, I don't think every guest needs to get it. And to add to this a little bit, that's something that we've been talking about on the show a lot, which is AI. We talked about the podcasting, what was it? The Adobe for Podcasters last episode. And we had some feedback on there, and the audio feedback that Brian sent in about his external microphone, actually the external microphone of his external camera is what he used and he processed, and it was actually quite good. So I think that there are some post-production practices now and protocols and workflows that can really make an audio sound amazing. So instead of thinking about it from the perspective of the microphone is going to make or break it, I think we've talked about this in the past. The location is going to make or break it more than the mic is. So if you can tell your person that they need to be in a quieter place with lots of padding, carpet, things around that are going to be great for audio versus being in a empty hallway, even though nobody's there, and have the echo, I think an echo and floor would make even if they have a microphone, it's still going to sound crappy. So those are my 2 cents.
Make sure if they're on a Mac that they've closed their mail client, because the mail client uses a lot of resources in the background. That will cause your fan noise to come on. Have them turn off any applications, close out any applications other than what they absolutely need. Don't have 55 tabs open with all these different things. Get, just the one tab in the browser that's needed. And finally, by the way, when you're shipping the microphone, and tell this to them as well, if you're shipping it in a box, shake the box. If you hear anything moving, that's bad.
Oh my God.
Yeah. The microphone will handle most shipping situations, but if it's loose in the box, don't throw it in a box. If it ships, it fits. If it fits, it ships, whatever it is from say Postal Service. Make sure there's good packing material. You don't have to overpack it, but make sure that it doesn't move around. Hold the end closed before you tape it and just shake the box. And if you don't hear anything moving, that's good. If you do hear something moving, then go back and adjust.
And to close out this segment, I'm actually going to do a call out for those of you who are listening who do this. Please email thefeed@libsyn.com and let us know your process. If you have sent a microphone to somebody, things that you have bumped into, troubles that have arisen, ways in which it has improved your content, and you're like, yes, I definitely need to do this. And I'm going to be very specific at calling out Liz Covart because I do know Liz has done this in the past. In fact, we talked through a little bit of this in a past communication that we had together. She's got a very, from what I remember, a very complex way in which she has developed the shipping of these microphones to folks that do work with her. I'm curious, Liz Covart, I'm shouting you out. Please send in some feedback to the feed at Libsyn.com and let us know how it's going, some things that you've learned because you've been doing this for a while, and whether or not you're still doing it. I'm sure Mignon would be super, super stoked to hear from you.
Now, I have a call for help for me and probably for some others. I used to have a site where I could drop in a URL for a spoken word mono MP3 file, and it would calculate the LUFS for that file. That site closed. I have been looking for another one. Again, the need is it being able to handle mono MP3 files from the direct URL, not something I have to upload the file to. Oftentimes I'm working with a podcaster and I need to check their loudness level, and I don't want to have to download it first, especially if I'm mobile and I can't download it. If anyone knows of a solution, please email me, rob@libsyn.com. So far, I've looked and I have just not been able to find one to replace the old one. So again, mono, MP3, and from direct URL, those are the needs it needs to meet for all those requirements, not just partial, all of them. Thanks for your help.
That is a very unique question there, Rob, because I had an idea at least, but you would have to download and upload, and it's so annoying.
Yeah, and I've got applications I can check on the computer, but it's when I'm mobile and someone is like, "Hey, I'm hearing his loudness level," and I'm like, well, "What are your LUFS at?" And almost nobody knows when I ask them. So then I have to go and check.
I wouldn't know.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah. So again, for the audio consultants and Chris Kearns and others in the audience, Steve Stewart, if you guys have found a solution that works for this, would love to hear what you're using. There might not be a site out there that handles mono because the only one I found right now it requires it to be a stereo file.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. All right. Well, Rob, listen, I think that you have been busy on the Twitter front. You've been just writing away on that platform.
Yeah. So, well, it started. Elon Musk replied, "Yup," to the following tweet. So let me read you the tweet that Elon Musk replied yup to. Quote, "At Twitter can become the world's #1 podcast platform in less than 90 days. Posting the @CDG podcast directly on Twitter grew my active listeners by 400% in 1 week. Why? Because people can listen without going to another platform. Here are the 5 critical upgrades that are still needed. Picture-in-picture, speed up and down, 10-second rewind forward, ability to listen with the phone closed, add a podcast tab on the profile page next to tweets and replies for discoverability. Insane opportunity," unquote. Again, Musk replied simply, "Yup." By the way, all of this you're about to hear, I've cut up into tweets. 17 of them. But first, let's look at where podcasts were consumed in March. Sorry, stick around to the end for April's numbers. Apple Podcasts and Apple Ecosystem, 66.6%. Spotify, 14.8%. Google Podcasts, 2.18%. And Overcast, 1.54%. And that's every aggregator app over 1% consumption across all shows on Libsyn in March. To get April's numbers, again, that'll be at the end of this episode. A little history. Libsyn has supported publishing to Twitter a custom post with a link to an episode for 12 plus years. Twitter has changed over time. There was once the Twitter bombers where the Twitter caused inflation of stats. That was fixed a long time ago. But per actually increasing a show's real audience in any significant way, well, we have not seen that in mass. And lots of issues why. Key ones being if the user played at the post and scrolled off, it stops. And really the consumption experience for the end user has just been horrible, right? When it does stop and you go away and come back the next day, it doesn't remember where you were. So lots of bad user experience. But that does not mean Twitter could not improve things on their side to become a viable consumption app. Here's what I think it would take to make Twitter an app where it gets at least 1% of the consumption. 1. In the Twitter iOS and Android apps, add a podcast tab at the bottom of Twitter that takes users to a podcast directory where they can discover shows. Pull in the directory from the current 500K plus active podcasts from Apple Podcasts. Don't clutter up the directory with the million plus podcasts that never made it to 5 episodes and have not published in over 90 days. Keep it to active podcasts to start. Don't have it full of clutter. As a side note, then you can add something for people to add to podcasts that haven't been out for a while, but they still want them in there. But keep it to active podcasts to start with. It's 500,000. It's a lot of podcasts. And that will keep your directory from being clutter filled like a lot of the others are. 2, make it easy to listen to podcasts while they scroll through Twitter and auto pause any audio podcast if the listener clicks on a post that causes audio or video to start playing, and then have it resume audio and video when that video or audio clip is over. 3, make it easy to share clips, links to episodes you are listening to. If a user finds something they are listening to that they like, have that back 15-second button that they can tap a couple times to go back to where the segment starts, and then have a easy share button where they can share from that point, making a tweet with a link that is then easy for others to listen to, which also includes a link to the show in the Twitter directory so others can then subscribe to that podcast themselves. 4, make it a real podcast consumption app. That means allowing for the end users to add a custom private RSS feed to their install of the Twitter app. Giving that custom ability is key. 5, give listeners a reason to use it to consume podcasts. Offer the variable playback speed, ability to download apps for playing in airplane mode, playlists, playback with the phone locked, all the things that you expect from a modern aggregator podcast app. 6, and this is a must, make it pass-through. No rehosting at Twitter. When someone clicks play or download, it pulls from the current podcast host directly, allowing the support of stitched ads. Trying to rehost files will kill this. The big shows are making the money from the programmatic, plus it would cost Twitter more money to rehost, and that's something, as I understand, it's short supply at Twitter. 7, allow podcasters to buy ads/banners promoting their podcasts and Twitter. Hey, now you get some money back. Right now, you can't do that in Apple Podcast. Also, measure and report the effectiveness of the ad campaign. How many views of the ad? How many clicks? How many subscribers? Do like Overcast does. 8, have top 100, 200 charts for all shows, all categories, and then all subcategories. Podcasters love to brag that their show was in the top 100, 200 of XYZ category, and having that even drop down to the subcategory gives more people the ability to brag about their show being in there. 9, have a portal podcasters can claim their podcast and see completion metrics and other info on how their shows were consumed on Twitter, i.e. like Podcast Connect. And then 10, I think it goes without saying, but no censorship. Apple Podcast has been really good about this. Follow their lead. I have a link to where I started the first post on that Twitter stream, and I sent it out to Elon and Brad, our CEO. So you'll see that. But that was my rant there on how Twitter could become a consumption app to get over 1%. And I am in no way, shape, or form delusional to think that it's going to ever overtake Apple or even Spotify for that matter. But for them to get to 1% would be great. Great to have someone else, because right now there's not many above 1. Any thoughts, Elsie? I know you're not a Twitter fan.
I'm not too much of a Twitter fan, although this is the only thing that I would ask. I mean, in addition, you really outlined a lot of stuff. I think that his head would split open or explode even more when he reads all of the things that you have to do in order for this to be viable. But I think even if they just implemented, number one, the ability to continue listening to something when the phone is in your pocket, when you're putting something down, that is obviously the most important thing, because currently that doesn't happen, because when the phone goes away, you have to stop listening. It doesn't support that. The second thing is finding that easily after it's closed, like being able to go back to work, like physically in the UI so that you can either stop, move it forward, refer back to it 3 days later. Oh yeah, I forgot I was listening to this podcast that is instrumental. The key thing that I would love from Twitter is once the episode goes live in the RSS feed, to just go straight live into my Twitter feed and to have the episode directly embedded there for somebody to listen to it and either open up in the, in quote, directory for me to refer back to, for me to start listening to it, and then automatically add it into my Twitter queue, if you will, for listening to podcasts. That would be unbelievably amazing. That would make me use it straight up, just to be able to like publish the episode straight into my Twitter thing and having it play right below there without me having to do anything. Just boom, it's there in my feed. That's it.
All right.
Good job, Rob. Good job telling Elon what he needs to be doing.
I'm sure nothing will come of it, but hey, put it out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so now a big shout out to Kamuela Kenishiro, long time listener to our show. He sent so much feedback in the past. We love him, and he has sent a little feedback for me that I want to let you guys know about because it's so great. So this is from an email. Quote, my long-awaited Legends from the Pacific, Book 1, is finally available for ebook and audiobook. Still working on physical copies. It's a collection of over 90 stories shared on my podcast episodes from 1 to 50, which was successfully funded via Kickstarter pre-COVID, but COVID delayed many things, so I'm very behind since I should be gearing up for book 3 by now, but oh well, life, right? Anywho, I've been speaking at conferences while podcasters and writings have been hiring me to help them with their Kickstarter campaigns and video productions. I am a 20-year film and TV veteran that also lectured in London and Hawaii. I also added audiobook director to my resume since I had the honor to work with renowned voice actress Emily Wu Zeller. Emily is an Asian American who's done anime narrated over 400 audiobooks, including The Empire Strikes Back, A Certain Point of View, the video game Cyberpunk 2077, and it's a fan of my podcast. Sweet. So there's going to be a link, folks, in our show notes in case y'all want to support Kamuela and his work and everything that he's done already for his show and for getting these stories out there, to a Spotify link to find his audiobook. So please check it out.
And he sent me that link earlier, preview of it. So thank you again for that. And congratulations.
Awesome. And kind of switching subjects, moving forward with video podcasts. This is a tweet that we got, and I'm going to just read it to y'all. My video podcasts are live streamed to YouTube and Facebook via my video live streaming service. Does Libsyn have a means of syndicating large video files to video platforms cost effectively? And this is by a podcast by George.
So there's two ways to look at this. There's the one where, okay, you want to get a really high quality one pushed out to some other services, and we do support pushing out to YouTube. But what I would recommend if you're going to do a video podcast with us, and that's where it's going to go on the RSS feed and go out to the places like Apple Podcasts that do pull from it, that you don't do a large video format. You don't want to do 720p. You don't want to do 1080p because what you upload is what gets downloaded, and that will destroy somebody's monthly data cap. I recommend SD video. It's 640 by 360, H.264 codec, .m4v format. Use the export to iPod setting and QuickTime Pro or compressor. That's what I recommend for video podcast because it does not destroy your viewers' data cap limit on their mobile device, which is where most people are consuming these video podcasts. And again, what you upload in podcasting is what gets downloaded. You don't get a different format in a different quality setting based on their connection speed. It's one and that's it. So the answer to your question is, I would recommend the higher quality one. You just upload directly to YouTube, and then you create a lower version one that you put out as a podcast, and that SD video one is about 6 meg per minute, so it's not so bad. There you go. That's my recommendation.
I'm not sure what the question is really, because if he's already live streaming to YouTube and Facebook, that means that they already have the file, right? So then I don't understand what the Libsyn of syndicating large video files to video platforms cost effectively means. Like, I guess I'm confused because I don't know why he would want to do that, because he's already doing that.
Some people, I've seen
Right.
people try to upload 4K videos.
No, I know, but what I'm saying to you is, why is he doing that if it's already happening?
Okay, so maybe he wants to get it out as a podcast to Apple Podcast and a few other of the apps that support podcasting. And maybe he wants to get it out to Vimeo or, other Brightcove or other services. And we don't publish to those. The only one that we actually do an upload for video is YouTube.
Is YouTube, correct.
And he
and
doesn't need
he's already doing that. So that's why I'm confused.
Yes. So
I would say why first.
Mhm.
And again, I have yet to find a reason as to creating a video podcast proper, as in I'm going to create a video podcast and it's going to be hosted on Libsyn, and I'm going to do the whole thing myself, not live streaming, but, creating a proper video podcast and just doing it. I have yet to find a reason. Like, I'd rather create a YouTube channel. Like, I don't know why I wouldn't do that.
Again, some people want to get it into Apple Podcasts because they keep hearing that video is the next big thing. I had a big conversation yesterday with somebody on this, and then finally the person came to the realization that really all they needed was audio. But again, unfortunately, there's a lot of people out there going video is a new thing, videos. No, it's not. But that's irrelevant. Again, per cost wise, uploading 1080p, 720p videos isn't cost effective in podcasting. And my recommendation, again, get it down to SD video so that it's mobile friendly and go that way. And then it's not such a big deal on the pricing. That's where I tell people to go.
Yep. All right. So speaking of video, because we're still talking video, we did have in the last episode, we talked about the fact that our podcast is now on YouTube and YouTube Music. I did share. So it is there and it's cool. I like it. It actually has, what it has now there, Rob, is it shows the artwork. It shows the rectangular artwork. Mm-hmm. It doesn't show the square artwork. Oh. So just letting you know that. So it has the rectangular artwork in YouTube Music. Mm-hmm. So these are some stats. Because, by the way, I think I talked about it in the last episode. We kind of bulk uploaded all the things because I wanted a little bit more of a hands-on type of a vibe, the way that we got the past episodes onto YouTube, just because we have a YouTube channel. And I didn't want to mess things up for Brian. And so we kind of hand uploaded, if you will, our past catalog for 2023. And the first episode that we put up into YouTube via the destinations on publish feature coming from Libsyn proper was episode 242. And because we did that, we now get the stats for that episode back into Libsyn Advanced Stats. That's just for you guys to know in case you did not know that. If you publish your episode directly from Libsyn to YouTube, you get those stats back. And so we did have some stats and I was kind of excited. I mean, listen, I've been watching YouTube for a long time, so I'm kind of used to looking at stats for YouTube. One thing that I did learn, though, I was exactly like most people were, very, very impatient, as in like, wait a minute, there's X amount of views on YouTube and I see 0 in our thing. And actually, Rob got my email on that. I was like, how come it's a 0 and this doesn't say this and what's going on? But I learned I just needed to be a little patient when it comes to YouTube stats. They are not like immediate.
It's not like Libsyn stats that are updating every 15 minutes. It's more of a once a day kind of thing.
Yeah. And so it took a little bit of time for it to go to log back, but it is showing you a lot of the stats. So it really does break down things. So we have obviously the title is there, the date of when you published, it has the views on there, and it has average view duration. And it also has an estimation of times watched, minutes watched, which are data points that are available within YouTube itself. So there's that.
Here's what we saw in the first week of release was 40 downloads out of a little over 1,000 downloads that we saw everywhere else. So just a tad bit under 4% of consumption, which was pretty good. Better than all the aggregator apps except for our podcast, right? For the feed. Better than all the other aggregator apps for the feed except for Apple Podcast, Overcast, Pocket Cast, and Podcast Addict. So yes, that means it was better than Google Podcast. It was better than Spotify and all others that we did not mention for the feed specifically. And then when you look at the average view duration, it was 3 minutes and 40 seconds. Estimated time watched in total was 2 hours and 26 minutes. So yeah, not exactly stellar for 40 views. Now, I do want to put this next article and put this thing into perspective. Ashley Carmen put out an article last week titled, "Massive Podcast Networks Put Their Shows on YouTube, but Nobody is Listening." Right? That was the title. She talked with some big podcast networks, Slate, NPR, New York Times, among others. Per Slate, the shows they put up on YouTube average around 75 views per video over the past week. NPR was around 179. So, hey, our 40 views actually looks even better. Right? And The Daily from the New York Times, one of the biggest podcasts in the world, received only around 1,000 views per episode over the past week on average. I think The Daily does somewhere in the 1 to 2 million range per episode. Could even be higher, depending on who is reporting on it. Best case for YouTube, that's 0.1%. And if it's 2 million, then it's 0.05%. Not 5%, 0.05%. So again, our 40 and our 3.8-ish%, not so bad. Where did we hear that YouTube hype needed to be tapped down a little in the past? Oh yeah, right here on this podcast. Again, we 100% think you should get your podcast into YouTube. And Libsyn makes it really easy and has for 10 plus years. Just know, if you are lucky, you might be like us and get a 4% bump. And even if average view duration is low and consumption on YouTube, it never was our goal. It was all about discovery. It's what we've been telling people. It's about discovery. And maybe we picked up 40 new listeners via being on YouTube. Even if it's part of that 40 are new listeners, that's great. Don't expect a lot. Go to there to be as a stumble upon a discovery method, and you won't be disappointed.
I'm happy to see those numbers there. I really am. And of course, those are, there's a lot of information that comes from YouTube that I think is incredibly helpful as well, because you get an opportunity to look at what people are clicking through, whether or not something is calling somebody's attention. You can play around with titles and see if that matters to people. You can collect stats, if you will, from links that you put inside of the description. It has already proven to be very helpful to me as I serve the community to be able to go, hey, we covered this on the feed. Here's the time code, and have it be time coded. So it, especially within YouTube, when people ask questions inside of YouTube, to be able to reference another video that's already in there, they're already on that platform. So they're more apt to listen to something they're already doing inside the platform. So that's actually really, really helpful to be able to do stuff like that. It's easier to share the link to the YouTube also, which is awesome. So there's a lot of really good things that are happening with YouTube stuff. And I do feel that depending upon what your category is, there might be more pros or cons to the work that's going out there. I've been very obsessed lately with some reality tea, some reality show like stuff that I've been obsessed now since the beginning of March, where I have discovered all kinds of new reality TV shows because they're covering a subject that I'm currently kind of obsessed with. And I've really seen the power that these specific producers have on YouTube, because they do an audio podcast and they do a video podcast. And those video podcasts get, upwards of 2,000, 3,000 views every time the episode goes out. And I have to say that I tend to watch those videos, and they are not highly produced. Especially one of the shows that I do has one dude. It's just his head. Not very good camera angles, not very good lighting. It sounds good, but it's not highly edited. It's super basic. And I would prefer to watch it on YouTube, even though it's the same show that goes out on podcasts. So, and we have the Vile Files as part of AdvertiseCast. I have now watched his show a couple times because of the same conversation. And I tend to watch the Vile Files on YouTube. Like, I don't listen to it. I'd rather watch it. So there are some categories that are really thriving on YouTube, and they're very additive to the stuff that's happening right now on the platform. So I can't discount it as a whole. I'm not sensing, that NPR types and public radio types are hanging out on YouTube. Like, it just feels to me that's a completely different demographic. I mean, please correct me if I'm wrong. So if they want to do that, they have to do something extra. The Verge, we're going to be talking about another article that they did just as we did last time. They have been putting out some really killer content when it comes to the Vergecast, which is the stuff that they've been putting out there. And that's doing really well. And it's the same. It's the same show that we're going to be talking about later on today. So, and it's so much better, I think, when you see these segments that they're putting together, but they really are spending some quality time putting that stuff out there. Some of my thoughts around what's going on there. And now moving on to a voicemail that we got from friend of the show, Mark Gunn.
Hey, Rob and Elsie, this is Mark Gunn, host of the Irish and Celtic Music Podcast. You asked, what happens if you post a long video on YouTube with music? Well, my show is exactly that. It is an hour-long show of Celtic music from around the world, and all by other people. Now, I have to seek permission for each track that is played. I also have to do my best to avoid cover songs, but that does not affect getting flagged on YouTube. YouTube flags all videos that have music that is also on streaming sites, and this is in part because of businesses like CD Baby. Now, YouTube has also figured out that they cannot monetize an hour-long show of Celtic music, so instead of just flagging the tracks, they will not make the video available at all. Now, from my best guess, any video that is over 30 minutes of music is prevented from being published. And again, to be fair, that is if you have multiple tracks of music. So I hope that helps. I found out the hard way. I was posting all my videos to YouTube for many years, and then all of a sudden, all of them became unpublished. So good luck to anyone who wants to publish a music podcast. I would recommend keeping it under 30 minutes in any case because of the copyright issues. While you might not run into official copyright issues, there's always that risk. And the fewer tracks you have, the less you have to worry about it. So, all right, hope that helps. Y'all have a great day. Sláinte.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark, for your feedback and for answering our question on this. And as a reward, maybe we should play a promo for Mark.
Oh my gosh, look at what I have. Thank you so much. And just to keep on with Mark Gunn, here we go.
Hey, this is Mark Gunn, host of the Irish and Celtic Music Podcast. St. Patrick's Day doesn't have to be just on March 17th. You can celebrate Celtic culture through music every day with the Irish and Celtic Music Podcast. Download a free episode 4 times a month featuring Celtic music groups from around the globe, from Ireland to Australia, Nova Scotia to Germany, and back here in the good old US of A. From traditional tunes to contemporary Celtic rock, you will enjoy hundreds of hours, literally hundreds of hours of great music. Get 34 Celtic MP3s for free when you sign up to the mailing list and to the podcast at CelticMusicPodcast.com.
Thank you so much,
Don't you
Mark.
like how that all just transitioned so well?
It just transitioned so well. So I actually put this article in here, Rob. What do you think about, so this was an article from Bloomberg, and it was Daniel Ek talking about AI.
Do you want to read his comments from this, or do you...
Sure. I'll read a little bit of this, some of the comments that Daniel Ek had on this article here. And this is from Bloomberg. Quote, Spotify CEO Daniel Ek said he's never seen anything moving as fast as the development of AI currently is at the moment. and that his company both needs to allow for creative innovation, but also protect creators and artists whose tracks are on its platform. He said Spotify takes its role seriously and is in constant discussion with partners, artists, and creators about how to balance these two interests. He later pointed out, on the riskier side, AI might cause copyright disputes. On the upside, more people might be able to make music regardless of whether they actually know how to play an instrument. That should lead to more music, and that music, obviously, we think is great culturally, he said, but it also benefits Spotify because the more creators we have on our servers, the better it is, and the more opportunity we have to grow the engagement and grow the revenue. What do you think of that part there, Rob?
I'm waiting for the first hit single that comes from an artist that then people discover isn't a real person and was AI. Someone sitting down at a chatbot and GPT and saying, create lyrics for an angst-ridden teenager with a hypnotic, methodical tune, right? And then they get this really dark lyrics and then some hypnotic melody that's created, and then created in a young, pubescent teenage girl's voice. And boom, and now you're going to have this hit single that comes out that people are like, oh, who is this amazing da-da-da? And then we find out after the song becomes a hit that some chatbot GPT engineers created this song and created this person and they don't exist. And then people will be like, oh, the end of artistry. Because I think that's what real artists are afraid of. I think people are afraid of that even on the podcasting side, that someone's going to use a chatbot and a voice and give a nice radio announcer voice and let's do a true crime podcast, and you get a podcast that's created and becomes a hit, and then people find out that the podcaster wasn't real and it was all created. So it's inevitable. How can that not happen at some point?
Yep. I think my biggest concern is actually this other aspect of this article, which again is going to be linked in the show notes, is this. Quote, the recent explosive development in generative AI will, if left unchecked, both increase the flood of unwanted content on platforms and create rights issues with respect to existing copyright law in the US and other countries, as well as laws governing trademark name and license, voice impersonalization, and the rights of publicity, he said. Further, we have provisions in our commercial contracts that provide additional protections. He said in any platform that distributes AI-generated music will then have an additional responsibility to find and address infringing content or anything that's been trained on artists' voice. He did add that UMG would be open to possibly licensing its catalog to business that are legitimate, supportive, and wanted a partnership for growth. The company is talking to lawmakers and governments about protecting creators' rights, end quotes. And so I think that's where I'm stuck in, right? Because there's a possibility that, there's a point where if you hire a podcast host that becomes incredibly popular, and for whatever reason, the podcast host no longer wants to do the show or whatevs, right? Mm-hmm. You could have that company, if it's for a company, that company could continue the show without the host. Mm-hmm. Because you can copy. I mean, seriously, it is so easy nowadays to do that. Maybe there's a little funkiness that's...
Well, I mean, I already talked to you about, mentioned in a previous episode about the example of someone using Descript just to do blog posts and turn them into audio, a male and a female voice, and that they used. And, all they had to do is get their person that was in the company that did the male and the female voice initially to do what it was requiring, enough recordings for Descript to learn and then validate. And then that's it. They never needed to use them again.
And so we talked about that as an empowering thing, right? Because it's amazing. I mean, how great would it be for just productivity, being able to put stuff out? I mean, there's so much good stuff with that. But you also have this other thing, right? So is that going to be one part of the negotiations? Like if you're hired to be a podcast host and you are the lead voice in something, it would be easy to be able to replace or continue a piece of work that is based on that, on somebody's voice. And can you stop that, right? I don't know. I mean, there's just so much in there now that is happening that way. And also whose, in quote, responsibility is it, right? Whose responsibility is it to catch folks somebody could clone your voice or my voice and create a podcast that sounds like us, that is not us.
Well, here's a better one. They could learn Elvis Presley's voice, a young Elvis Presley, early 1950s Elvis Presley, or mid 1950s Elvis Presley, and learn his voice, and then go create a song, take that song in Elvis's voice, and then cut it onto a piece of vinyl, make it look all legit, and have a note that says, "Hey, to my sweetie, this is a song only ever for you." And someone goes, "Hey, I found this lost Elvis song."
Right.
And then put a YouTube video up around that and play it, and then fake out a whole lot of people thinking that there's a great new Elvis song. And if someone takes that idea and runs with it, kudos. But I am not promoting that as an idea.
Yeah.
But the point is, there's going to be a lot of this stuff that people are going to do nefarious things with AI for publicity, for fun, just as a gag. We'll see where it goes.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
I'm more worried about the fact when it asked AI what AI worries about, and one of the worries was that humans would think AI is a threat. No.
Well, yeah, of
Skynet.
course it's going to protect
Skynet.
itself.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, it's
Skynet.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. All right. So, but I mean, there are some good uses to obviously AI. And one of the good ones is coming out now from the Alphonic team. So Alphonic just published automatic silence cutting. And this is directly from Alphonic. Our automatic silence cutting algorithm detects and cuts silence segments reliably. All you need to do is to enable the algorithm in your production. No further settings are required. This is the easiest possible way for you to cut silence in an audio file. In our audio processing system, silence cutting is a multi-stage algorithm. We use our sophisticated voice activity detection algorithms to detect what is useful content and what is silence. Then we cut the silence parts and crossfade the remaining audio segments to make sure no audio artifacts are introduced. When cutting, we ensure that intended speech breaks, example between two sentences, remain untouched, unquote.
Because that last part's important, right? If it was just willy-nilly cutting silence, everything becomes it's like a German word, right? Really, it's just one big German word, one big sentence, and that you don't want. When I do editing, and I'm doing this, when I'm cutting out the breath, right? When I'm cutting those out, I'm usually reducing the gap of the breath half. So whatever the gap of the breath is, I cut it in half. When I put the silence in to cover the breath, then I shrink it down halfway. So I'm not just removing the breath, but I'm taking it back to make it the pause not be as long. But occasionally I'm also adding a pause in. Sometimes someone asks a question and answers it way too quick, and you want to put a little bit of a pause, a break in there to make it seem like, okay, there was some thought and that they didn't already have a script in the hand. And when the person reads a little too quick off of the softball question that was thrown out that they knew ahead of time. So sometimes you want to put that break in there. Sometimes you want to put a break in there just because you can see that they're catching their thought and they're pondering how to answer, and you don't want it to be so quick. It seems awkward sometimes to not have the break. Even though they're doing all this, you're still going to have to put some gray matter to this, I still think.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I've been using another app primarily for video stuff, and I can see how easy it is. And mind you, the output isn't a proper, it's not like a film, and it's not a proper YouTube long form video, but I've been using an app called Time Bolt, which essentially does this, but for video. So you upload a video and then it cuts out the silences. It works a little bit better than what I would imagine the subtlety of audio, because with a lot of the hip editing as of now, there's a lot of jump cuts and there's a lot of sharp cuts that are obviously superficial, but at the same time, that's what the cool thing is right now on the internet, especially for short form social video. And so it actually makes things easier. But for audio that way, it just feels like it needs a little bit of a higher touch. And mind you, you can set the parameters of what it cuts to be more reflective of the output that you want for both of these services. So if you want a lighter touch, I believe you can adjust some of that stuff too. But one thing that Brian mentioned, Brian Coddington, our video editor, is that he believes, I haven't tested it, by the way, that it also takes into account breaths so that it allows for the natural sound of the breath within the cuts, which I think is really good too, because that's weird. If you cut all that stuff out, not good. We chatted last episode about an article from The Verge, which was talking about the top laptop microphones, but they also really touched on the top wireless buds, and they're stress tested in the same environment as the laptops were. So what did you think about the top ones? Do you want to mention them?
Yeah.
Rob?
So when we did the laptop mics, we said some of them were good enough to be used on a podcast. The microphones on earbuds, Apple AirPod Pro, Sony Link Buds, Samsung Galaxy Buds 2 Pro, and the Google Pixel Buds Pro, in short, all had issues. I was not a fan of the audio quality of any of them per being usable on a podcast. Now, granted, they were in really noisy environments, and it was about noise cancellation. But if your guest asks you if using earbuds is acceptable, be like Nancy Reagan. Just say no. Friends don't let friends record with earbuds. Right? That was my take. Listening to all of them, I was like, oh, no. I mean, it was like when we listened to the laptop mics, oh, okay, yeah, it's better than nothing. And with some post-production stuff, clean up, it's fine. But the earbud ones, I mean, one of them in the Google Pixel, it sounded like someone was talking like this.
Yeah.
Right? And that's not good. You really needed to tell people no. Be like Mignon, send them a mic.
Yeah. No, it's true. It's true. I had the same feeling as well. I think that definitely the AirPods Pro is the one that won. Then there was like the Sony Link Buds, then the Samsung Galaxy Buds 2 Pro, and then the Google Pixel Buds Pro. But you're right. It's like all of them sounded kind of the same with a tiny little bit better quality in the sense of that you could listen to the voice itself better, but the quality of the voice for all of them was the same. And for sure, it was sucky. So there's that. Link will be in the show notes. If I can find the Vergecast on YouTube, I'll put that there for you guys too, so that you can check it out and to see what the Vergecast is doing on YouTube. Because as of right now, the Vergecast itself, which is obviously a podcast, does have over 10,000 subscribers on YouTube just for the Vergecast. Okay, so moving right along here to the new podcast segment. What are we talking about here?
There were two that I saw that came across that were proved within a day of each other. And this is from the last 2 weeks, new podcasts I saw that popped up. And the title for one was Rebel One Cantina. And then the other one was Trek Tonight. Most or many, or maybe I'm overestimating the nerd quality of the audience, probably can guess what one or both are about. But neither really would be found when someone searches for Star Wars or Star Trek, which is what they're obviously about, at least to me as a nerd. When doing a fan cast like these, you should start your title with the topic you are covering as a fan, such as Star Wars Fancast Rebel One Cantina or Star Trek Fancast Trek 2 Tonight. Get the topic people will be searching for up front so that it will be in the predictive results. And I did notice quite a few Star Trek podcasts were doing that. Star Wars ones were not. So there's an opportunity there for at least the Rebel One Cantina folks to optimize their show title to be better found in search, which right now for Star Wars, Rebel One Cantina does not show up, and Star Trek, Trek Tonight does not. And the number 2, it's Trek space, the number 2, space, night. That does not show up when you search for Star Trek. Again, you're going to do a fan cast. Think about what the fans of that topic would be searching for. Get it at the beginning of the title of your podcast and say it's Fancast, Star Trek Fancast. That lets people know up front that it's not an official podcast so that you're not in trouble there either.
Mm-hmm. All right. And we had a closing.
Yeah. Business space update. Backtracks announced it is closing. Backtracks has been around for a while, I think going back to 2016, 2015. They were focused on metrics and attribution and offered a small number of clients hosting as well. They had their own player that was accessibility compliant, and their player was IEBV2 certified. Plus, they had transcriptions service that worked with their player for closed captioning. Their servers will close down on May 19th. If you are using the prefix prepend from them, make sure to remove it from your feed prior to the 19th. FYI, it was not one of the approved prepend prefixes you could add in Libsyn, so this closing should not impact any Libsyn podcast feeds, but there are other services out there that would have allowed it. So again, if you were using the Backtracks prefix prepend, make sure you remove it from your feed prior to May 19th. All right. So now we are into our promo number 3. And like Backtracks, we're going to go into the darkness here.
Bolt your doors, lock your windows, turn off your lights, and come with me into the weird darkness. I'm Darren Marlar, bringing you true stories of the paranormal, supernatural, legends, lore, crime, conspiracy, mysterious, macabre, unsolved, and unexplained 7 days a week. Recently voted number 2 in the best horror true crime podcasts for 2020 by Podcast Magazine. Search for Weird Darkness wherever you listen to podcasts.
Thank you so much, Weird Darkness. I love this promo. And now it's your turn, Rob. It is time for Geographic and User Agents.
All right. So first up is country breakdowns for April per downloads geographically from all sources. And here's what we found. U.S. 64.3%, Canada 5.3%, UK 4.9%, Australia 3.5%, Germany 2.6%, Sweden 1.6%, India 1%. That's everybody 1% or more. Those under 1% in order: Japan, Spain, Mexico, France, Netherlands, Denmark, Brazil, Colombia, New Zealand, Ireland, South Africa, Switzerland, and Iran. There was one change in the top 20 for April versus March. Iran entered into the top 20. And between March and April, those with changes greater than 0.2% was just the U.S., moving up to 64.3% from 63.6%. Of course, check your stats to see how your show measures up for these numbers for April. And now into the user agent part of stats, which we teased earlier. For April, across all shows globally hosting on Libsyn, Libsyn Pro for IAB stats, mobile downloads were at 92.87% of all downloads going direct to a mobile device. That's up a wee bit from March's 92.55. Computer downloads were down a wee bit to 6.84%. Home office attendance plus set-top boxes were at 0.3% in April. The iOS to Android ratio in April was 5.6 to 1. That's down a smidge from March's 5.8 to 1. Mobile aggregator apps, not from Spotify or from Apple, in April were 10.21% of all downloads. That's down a smidge from 10.26 in March. And the big dog in aggregator apps is still Apple, with Apple Podcast app and iTunes and the Apple ecosystem combining to come in at 66.0% of all downloads for April. Number 2 in April was Spotify, up to 15.5%. Number 3 was Google Podcast at 2.2%. Number 4 was Overcast at 1.5%. And that was everyone 1% or greater. Those under 1% in order were Pocket Cast, CastBox, the podcast app, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Podbean, Amazon Music, Podcast Addict, Player FM, Podcast Republic, Downcast, AntennaPod, TuneIn Radio, Evox, Pandora, Deezer, Podimo, Samsung Podcast, Fountain, Castro, iCatcher, Podkicker, Mixer Box, RSS Radio, Bullhorn, and Podcast Guru, and then the many, 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 many more that come in at less than 0.02% and don't really warrant mention yet. Again, those were based on IAB numbers for the month of April across all Libsyn and Libsyn Pro hosted shows. Now, outside of aggregator apps, there were browsers. Chrome came in at 3.1% and Safari was at 1.3%, Mozilla 0.5%, and Firefox 0.4%. Overall, all browsers combined were just around 5.5% of downloads. If you have a show with over 10K downloads a month and more, then say 10% is from browsers, you might want to really question some things that are going on. Again, the higher the total number of downloads, typically, the lower the percentage should be for browsers. And not even typically, it really is. If you got a high number of downloads, 10K or more, you should not see 10% for browsers. You should be seeing that 5.5 or less percent. Our AdvertiseCast team updated their monthly podcast advertising rates. These rates, which are denoted as cost per thousand or CPM, the data is derived from actual sales data across the 2,900 plus roughly podcasts in the AdvertiseCast marketplace. For April, the average CPM rate for a 60-second spot was $23.07, up from March's 22.19%. So nice increase there. Note, this is the average CPM rate for a single 60-second ad drop in an episode. If the episode has, for example, 3 ad drops, it would be 3 times $23.07. From Dave Hanley, our Chief Revenue Officer, quote, "We've seen a real shift from advertisers taking a test and learn approach to fully integrating podcasting into their media strategy. As advertisers look to optimize their investment strategies, we continue to provide additional tools and solutions to show the efficiency and efficacy of their campaigns in a much more precise and transparent way," unquote. Hey, Dave, you didn't trick me on the efficacy one there. Got through it without stumbling. All right. The 3 highest CPM categories for March were technology at $28 CPM, education at $26 CPM, and business at $25 CPM. Average means average. Some shows had higher rates, some lower. Thanks, Dave and team, for keeping the space educated on where average ad rates are for podcasting on a per ad read basis. And of course, if you are interested in advertising on a podcast, maybe to promote your show to a similar audience, please email me directly, rob@libsyn.com, and I can get you to the right people. And AdvertiseCast will help you grow your show or sell your product via podcast advertising. Again, email me directly, rob@libsyn.com, if you are looking to advertise on other podcasts. Now we are on to where have we been? And I spoke on stats and how to break down what is good and bad looking stats and more, and how to find that someone's being malicious in a community presentation for Allegra at thepodcasthost.com. Thanks again to Allegra for the opportunity to talk with her community. And I know you've talked with her community before as well.
I have. I love it over there. It's really awesome. So you guys check out the link that we're going to have in the show notes to make sure that you get an opportunity to see everything that we have going on. And now we're going to be talking about where we're going. And before we continue on, I am so excited to be doing a video first. Again, this is like the second session that we're doing of podcast gear setup this time. Podcast gear setup for 2023 with Doc Rock from the Ecamm Live team. And he's going to be chatting with me about all of the gear that you really, really need for getting your video podcasting up. And I have to tell you, every single time that I watched Doc Rock talk about gear, Rob, I learned something I didn't know before, because he always talks about the little tiny bits that you totally forget when it comes to being able to put things together for your podcasting setup, that if you're adding video, because mind you, the ports alone, just the ability to plug in all the bits is more. And so you have got to show up to be able to watch us talk through all of this stuff and bring all of your questions. In fact, if you have a video podcasting gear question as a whole, send them over, and I'm happy to add them over to our queue for asking Doc Rock live as we stream. And this is happening on May 18th at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard, and I look forward to seeing all of you there.
All right. We're going to be at the Podcast Show 2023 in London, May 24th and 25th. Libsyn will have a few people there. Dave Jackson will be there. So if you're at the show, please go see Dave. If you have any questions on podcasting, he definitely can help you out. Brett Durbeck, our CEO, will be there as well, and multiple other folks, Corey, marketing team. So come by the booth, say hi. Our team would love to talk with you.
And of course, we have June. We have She Podcast Live in June. It's getting close. So I do hope that you got your ticket. And again, my appeal to you is, if you're not attending, if you can't go, buy a ticket anyway. Buy a ticket anyway. We have a scholarship program where you can donate that ticket, or just buy your ticket because you really want to support She Podcast Live and events like this to continue to keep going. So if this is something that you've got going on in there and you really want to support somebody in the podcasting space that really, really needs to be doing their thing and you want them to continue on, buy a ticket to She Podcast Live.
All right. And then after that, we've got Podcast Movement in Denver, August 21st to 24th. Time to get your tickets. And I started back on a diet plan to get rid of all my COVID weight last month. I am down 22 pounds as of today. And my goal is to lose another 23 So I'm about halfway to my goal, and I want to get there by the end of July, because I know the first half is always easier than the second half. So, I got to lose about a pound every 4 days to the end of July to get there, and which is doable, and then maintain that. And so that when I go to Denver, I won't be wearing the XL shirts. I'll be wearing the L shirts.
Right on. Sweet. You're going to have to put those in your bag somewhere and make sure that they don't disappear.
My goal's 45 pounds off from the end of NAB by the time I show up at Podcast Movement.
All right.
That's it. Again, we'll have others to mention here shortly. Folks, if you're looking for a job in podcasting, make sure you go to podcastingjob.com. I didn't check it today, but at the end of April, we had 5 openings listed there. So again, podcastjobs.com. Don't forget to send in your feedback for anything we did or did not mention on this episode. You can record that feedback and email to us, thefeed@libsyn.com, or you can call us 412-573-1934, or you can use SpeakPipe at speakpipe.com/thefeed.
Wow.
I think that's it.
That is it. Well, thank you so much, everybody. And we look forward to chatting with you in a couple weeks.
Ciao.
Bye.